THORchain is a massive sleeping DeFi giant that I believe has 10x potential from this point, if not even more. And THORchain is something that is changing the game, doing something completely unique. And in this video, I want to basically explain this to you in as simple terms as possible. There's a lot going on with THORchain and RUNE, and I want to make this as simple as possible. So in this video, we're going to be covering things like what actually is THORchain, how to swap, how to provide liquidity. We're going to be talking about the RUNE tokenomics and why there's a 10x price potential, as well as some of the future developments that are coming to THORchain and RUNE, and also what are the risks involved. Now, I do have to give a shout out to Hey, I'm the new guy. He was insanely helpful. I just got off a call with him, and he basically taught me everything that I know about THORchain and RUNE. So shout out to him. But to keep it really simply, exactly what THORchain is it's a decentralized cross-chain liquidity network. Now, what does that mean? It basically means you're going to be able to swap one asset to another asset, which is like what you can do on any decentralized exchange like Uniswap. But the caveat is that you can do it from different chains. So now, for like the first time ever, you can swap like native Bitcoin into Ethereum, or you could swap Bitcoin into Luna. Now, you could normally do this on a centralized exchange, and that would be the only way that you could do it, right? You could swap, say, Bitcoin for USDT and then USDT for Luna, but now you'll be able to do direct swaps from like Bitcoin to Luna, for example, or any chains that are supported by the THORchain network. And this is huge because for the first time in DeFi, you don't have to like go through this long, expensive, risky process of bridging your funds from one layer one protocol to another. So with that being said, let me show you how this actually works. So if you just come in here to swap, you'll see there's a whole bunch of different apps here, but by far the most popular is something called thorswap. So you can just click on thorswap right here. Now, in order to interact with THORchain, you're going to need to download something called the XDeFi wallet. Okay, it's a Chrome extension. It works like pretty much all of the other different wallets out there, except for this one. You can also have a bunch of different chains on it. As you can see, they're already pre-installed, and so you get the idea. Okay, this also does include the THORchain blockchain. So there you go. Now, in order to swap, it's really simple. You don't need to have any RUNE. You can just swap from whatever asset to whatever asset. So for example, like I could swap from Bitcoin to, say, Ethereum, just like this, which never before have you been able to do this in a decentralized manner. So how does this work? It's pretty simple, but basically if you want to swap Bitcoin to Ethereum, the way that the pools and the swapping works on THORchain is basically every pool is paired with the native asset RUNE. So for example, there's the Bitcoin RUNE pool. So you'll deposit your Bitcoin. It'll automatically swap it for RUNE, and then that RUNE will also be used in the RUNE ETH pool. So we'll be able to swap from Bitcoin to Ethereum, basically using RUNE as the bridge. So in order to do swaps, just like any DEX, you select which asset you're swapping from, which asset you're swapping to, and you just put the amount, and then you just go ahead and you click swap. Now, on any decentralized exchange, there's always two parties, right? There's always the user or the person that's doing the trading or swapping, which would be this person, right? And then there is the liquidity providers, which is the people that are providing liquidity to these pools. And that's essentially how a DEX actually works. Now, here's how to provide liquidity, and this is why this is so cool, is because you can essentially earn 21% APY on your Bitcoin, which is crazy, 65% on your BUSD, and you can see all of the different opportunities here. But basically the way that this works is essentially when you provide liquidity, you'll have multiple options. So if you wanted to, you could add funds either asymmetrically by just adding Bitcoin or just adding RUNE, or you can add equal parts. If you've ever provided liquidity in the past, you know that you have to provide 50% of one asset and 50% of another asset. So this makes it cool in that you can just add one asset. Now, with that being said, when you do add just Bitcoin, for example, it's going to divide it into 50% Bitcoin and 50% RUNE. Now, the really cool thing about this is that THORchain has this no impermanent loss feature, which is insanely cool. But basically, over the course of 100 days, every single day you get 1% impermanent loss protection, which means after the course of 100 days, now you have no impermanent loss. Now, if you're unfamiliar with impermanent loss, it's kind of a confusing topic, but this is a huge, huge deal. I'm not going to get into the basics of impermanent loss. You can Google that on your own, but this is a huge deal because now you can provide, say you're bullish on both Bitcoin and on RUNE, you can provide Bitcoin and RUNE into this liquidity pool. You can have no impermanent loss, and at the same time, you can be earning 21% on these assets. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the THORchain or RUNE tokenomics. So a couple quick things here. You can see there's a max supply of 500 million coins that will ever be in circulation. Currently, there's 330,000 that are out in the marketplace. So that's about 66% of the total supply. But the reason why people are really bullish on THORchain and RUNE, and why I'm bullish on RUNE as well, is because it really could be like a liquidity black hole, meaning that tons of money could get sucked in to THORchain, which is going to be really beneficial for the price of RUNE. So let me explain how this works. Anytime you're doing anything like swapping, right? If you're swapping from Bitcoin to, like in our example earlier, Ethereum, right? RUNE has to be used, right? Because remember, it swaps from Bitcoin to RUNE and then RUNE to ETH. So anytime a swap happens, it's using RUNE. Also, there's a high probability that a lot of liquidity is going to come into these pools. These pool APYs are really, really attractive, especially for things like Bitcoin, and some of the stable coins are really quite attractive. So if you are bullish on the price of RUNE and you're bullish on another asset, then it makes sense that a lot of liquidity could come into here, okay? And why this is so big, as more and more liquidity comes in, or more and more money comes into THORchain, this is going to be really, really good for the price of RUNE. And it's because of this thing called deterministic value. And I'm not going to get in explain in depth, but I'll basically show you how it works. So just in this example, it's say that we have $100 worth of non-RUNE TVL that's locked in THORchain. So what does that mean? Okay, non-RUNE. Okay, so this means this could be things like Bitcoin, this could be things like Ethereum, this could be things like Luna, whatever assets are in here, even Dogecoin, like all of this, right? Non-RUNE. So the total value of all of these coins locked, let's say that it was $100. Well, in order for that to happen, the market cap of RUNE needs to actually be 3x that. So it would be like $300 in this example, right? Now, obviously, we're talking about a lot bigger numbers. For example, if say if there's $1 billion of non-RUNE TVL locked, then the market cap of RUNE would need to be like $3 billion. And this is like the floor price, meaning that it really couldn't go below this, which is really crazy. So as more and more money starts to come in to THORchain and gets locked here, the floor price is going to continue to rise for RUNE, which gives it some of the most insane tokenomics, I think, in all of crypto. And by the way, I actually, another really good resource, this thread here, THORchain 101. I think this guy did a really great job breaking down THORchain and RUNE. So if you want to just read that really quickly, I think that would also give you a good idea of what's actually happening here. Now, let's take a look at what's actually happening with the price, because RUNE was at its all-time high, like up over $20, and it's seen these crashes. Now, what's happened? Well, the crash was actually due to an exploit that happened. And because THORchain is doing something pretty complex, right, and solving a massive problem, being able to, cross-chain swaps, there's a lot of complexity that goes into this. So there was an exploit. Now, a thing that I did learn was that even though there was this exploit, actually none of the users actually lost funds, and the treasury actually paid back all of the users. So there was no loss to anybody that was actually using THORchain, which I think is a really good vote of confidence to be had. Now, also, if we just take a look at it here, price went from $4 up to like $8. So what's actually happening? There's some major bullish things that are coming to THORchain that I think could really cause the price of RUNE to go from like, $8. I think it could go all the way up to like $100 realistically. And I'll tell you why. The first thing that's happening is actually that Terra is coming to THORchain. Okay. So one of the things that's happening that is causing, really has caused this pump is that Terra is actually coming to THORchain very soon. It could be like any day now, or it could even be today. But essentially, Terra, as you can see, is the second highest in terms of total value locked, only behind Ethereum. And as you know, Terra has become a DeFi giant in of itself. And so now this is going to allow for assets like Luna and UST to come to THORchain, which is only going to bring even more total value locked to THORchain. And as you know, as more total value locked happens, then we do expect the price to continue to increase, because basically 3 times the amount, remember this deterministic value, the market cap needs to be like 3 times the amount of the TVL. Now, another thing that came is synthetics. And this is also what's caused the bullish price action. But basically, you'll be able to actually have all of these different assets synthetically on the THORchain blockchain, which is also a big deal. Now, a couple other big things that are actually coming to THORchain as well is the fact that they are planning on adding like one new chain. The goal, at least, is to add one new chain per month. So I know there's talks about bringing Avalanche. There's also talks about bringing Monero and Dash and all of these different blockchains to the platform. And every time a new chain comes to THORchain, I mean, the TVL should increase, which should be really bullish for the price of RUNE as well. Now, one of the biggest things coming actually is something called THORFi. And this is a good video to watch if you're interested in learning more. But basically what THORFi is like a money market. So for example, like Aave, you can deposit your assets and you can borrow against them, right? But the difference here is that you're going to have, with THORFi, there's going to be no liquidation risk, which is a huge deal, as you know, if you've ever used a money market before. And what it's going to allow you to do is use your liquidity pooling position as collateral. So for example, here, if you are in a, say, Bitcoin pool, or you're in this, essentially it's a Bitcoin RUNE pool, right? Like we talked about, if we're in this pool and say we have $100,000, we'll be able to deposit that into THORFi and we'll be able to borrow money against that, right? Which is really, really cool, with no impermanent loss, with no liquidation risk. Now, one of the downfalls is that when you do provide liquidity, you stop earning this APY that you'd normally earn for providing liquidity on THORchain. But at the same time, that opens up something called THORchain savings account, basically, where essentially you'll be able to like deposit your Bitcoin and everything will happen behind the scenes, and you'll be able to have like a Bitcoin savings account where you'll be able to earn, we don't know the rates yet, but it could be 10% plus just on your Bitcoin without having to provide liquidity or anything like that. So that's another big development that's coming. Now, the last big development that's actually coming to THORchain is something called THORUSD. So THORUSD is essentially an algorithmic stablecoin, which is very similar to the way that UST operates. If you know anything about UST, you know it's an algorithmic stablecoin, and anytime UST is minted, basically Luna has to get burned, right? And this has caused the price of Luna to skyrocket as UST continued to get adopted. Now, the same thing will happen with THORUSD. Anytime THORUSD actually gets minted, they're actually going to burn RUNE, which could put RUNE in like a deflationary model, kind of like how Luna is right now. I think this is massive for the price of RUNE and for THORchain. And by the way, if you found this helpful at all, I would say that you should consider becoming a member at bluedgefinancial.com/crypto. Join our crypto Discord, our community. You'll get access to our researchers, our portfolio, our algorithms, our DeFi playbook, where you can see all of the DeFi plays that we're making before we actually announce them, and all of this. So consider becoming a member. So that's the conclusion here with THORchain. I'm mega bullish on THORchain and on the price of RUNE itself. I think that it's providing a solution to a really big problem in the world of decentralized finance. I think a lot of money is going to get sucked into this black hole, right? Which is only going to be really positive for the price of RUNE. If this video was helpful, go ahead and click subscribe and like it and turn on the post notifications, as well as we have other videos that were really helpful that you can see right here.